staccato duet excerpt that we have this year is full of staccato. So let's talk about how to play staccato. What does staccato actually mean? Well, we want to have some separation. Some people will say that it means that a note should be played half value, which also implies separation. Well, how are we going to make the separation? You've got two ways you can separate notes. You can stop your air, or you can stop the reed. Stopping the reed is the one that we use much more often, especially for this kind of music. So let's talk about how we're going to do that. The first thing that you need to remind yourself is that it doesn't matter what kind of articulation we're using here, air is going to be the most important thing for you. So we get really wrapped up in all the stuff that our tongue has to do while we're wiggling our fingers around, and sometimes we just plain out forget about using our air and keeping the air flowing. So let's check on that and work our way towards staccato, also using legato as a learning tool to get us there. So the first thing that you can do is you can pick a section in this music that you want to play, and the main thing we need to do first is we need to play it slurred. So we're going to use the last two lines of the music. After the double bar fine ending that you can see, we're going to slur everything possible. We will try to do a light touch of the reed when we have a repeated note. So I'm verifying that my air is doing a nice job playing between notes. I'm making sure that I'm trying to deliver the air very consistently using the control of my abdominal muscles. And I'm trying to just make sure that my fingers are moving very cleanly and that I don't have any problems with the fingerings of the notes themselves. The second thing I'm going to do after I check on that is I want to play the same thing, but play it with a very light legato touch of the reed. I'm thinking more about releasing the reed than I am about going to it. So if this is my reed and this is my tongue, I'm thinking about knee, knee, knee. I want the action of releasing the reed. I don't want to think about that. I don't want to think about traveling to the reed. I don't want to hit the reed. I don't even like the term attack of a note. The attack. That term bothers me because I don't want to attack the reed. I want to touch the reed and then release it to allow its vibrations. So let's play this using a light legato touch. When I'm playing it with that legato style, I want to make sure that it sounds the same to me with my air. I want to make sure that my air continues to play between the notes. I want to continue to make sure that my fingers are moving cleanly. And very importantly here, I'm trying to make sure that the coordination of my tongue and my fingers is accurate. The next step will be to add the staccato style. So let's talk about what staccato actually means. To play staccato, we want to return our tongue to the reed and stay there for longer than the legato style. With legato, it's touch and release. For staccato, I will touch and I'll spend longer before I release the reed. That is what makes the space between the notes. One way we can experiment with this will be with our voice. We can use air and tongue, and that's it. Almost like you're trying to whistle, but you're doing it badly. You can just blow some air like that. And what I want you to try to do is say neat, N-E-A-T, the word neat, and do it though with air. And you're gonna kind of pucker. And when you get the T ending of neat, you can feel how that T ending helps your tongue snap back to the roof of your mouth, because we don't have the saxophone there. So somewhere that hard palate area, kind of right up there back behind your top teeth. I'm trying to say neat, but do it with air and tongue only. Now, how is that going to sound and feel on saxophone? Let's try it with a single pitch. Let's use B. B is a nice, non-resistant kind of note. So, I compared that, doing the air and tongue thing, with actual saxophone. And I'll find that when the saxophone is in my mouth, that reed is in the way, so I don't get back to the roof of my mouth, I just get to the reed. I snap back, I stay there while I continue to blow air. If you return to the reed and push the reed so hard that it closes onto the mouthpiece, you're going to feel a lot of back pressure because your air won't have anywhere to go until you free the reed, and that essentially opens a valve and the air has someplace to go. So you might experiment with seeing if you can return to the reed, but not so strongly that you are collapsing the reed onto the mouthpiece. Maybe you can just return to the reed enough to stop its vibrations, and you might still have some sizzle of air. I don't know how much it's going to come through on this recording, but I have kind of a little bit of noise around that when my tongue is on the reed. I'm hearing a little, up close, I'm hearing a little crackle of saliva. I'm hearing a little bit of kind of ring of sound as the reed is still barely trying to vibrate. And that's going to be okay when you're working on this exercise. That kind of sound generally doesn't travel out to an audience very well. Now, let's take that technique to the same musical passage. So we've played it slurred, we've played it with a legato touch. Now let's see if we can put the staccato style in place. Another challenge that you are faced with in this all-region music is that you have to start some very low notes as your very first thing. The common chord exercise and the thirds exercise. You have to start on a low C, and you also have to start on the low B flat. That is a challenge for all saxophonists. We can often play them comfortably if we get started someplace else, but the challenge of starting on that low note with the response that we want is particularly tough. So what are some things that you can do about that? I want to remind you first off that low notes are not necessarily as hard as you think. They don't require that you blow harder unless you're not using enough air to begin with. If you are achieving a characteristic sound on your instrument in other parts of the horn, you probably have enough airflow for the low notes. I don't think that I blow harder on low notes. What I do is I am using what we call voicing to help the low notes respond better. Maybe you can think about it this way. The distance between the middle of your tongue and the roof of your mouth is going to need to change while you're playing depending on the length of the instrument. So for a short note such as B or open C sharp, your instrument is a shorter note. It's really only up about this long on the instrument. And you can even see, looking for open pads, you can see about how long your instrument is for that respective note. When you add fingers to the instrument and get all the way down here around onto the large part of the instrument, that's a very long note. And for those, you will need more space between the middle of your tongue and the roof of your mouth. So the idea about voicing is that you are changing what's happening inside your mouth for nearly every note. One way that you can experiment with that is that you can start on a note that's more comfortable. Let's say low F. Low F is a more comfortable note to begin with. And what I want you to do is I want you to play down the instrument one time. We're just going from F down to C. Now, I want to immediately stop and sing those notes. Now, the octave may not be exactly right, depending on where the pitch of your voice is, but I want to match that pitch in some octave. And I want to try to feel inside my mouth what my tongue might be doing when I sing those notes. And I might be able to notice that around the middle of my mouth, if this is my tongue, I'm going to feel that somewhere in the middle, it gradually gets lower as I sing lower. Now, I might even encourage a little more opening in the middle of my mouth. I don't want it to be a loosening of my embouchure. I don't want it to be a dropping of my jaw. I want those things to hold steady. I want it to be all inside my mouth. Now, after I play down to that C, or whatever note is giving me trouble, maybe it's D, maybe it's C, I want to go down there slurring, and once I get to that note, I want to stay there for a moment. I want to stop my air. I want to try to remain in contact with the mouthpiece as much as possible, and I want my tongue to remain in approximately the same voicing position that I just ended. And then I want to play that note immediately, seeing if I can feel what I did to slur down to that note and then start with all the same things. I might notice that I've changed something when I go to restart that low note. I'll do that on the C right now. If I want to find my very best control, I'll even try to breath start that low note. That time I used some articulation. There was a little bit of a delay, but generally I can feel that I'm trying to find all of the same things. Necessary air pressure, embouchure activity or energy into the mouthpiece, voicing where I've got the right amount of space in the middle of my mouth, and hopefully that note will speak the way I want it to. Let me try that down to the low B flat. I'll start on the same thing. I'll start on low F, I'll work my way down, E, D, C, and then B flat. One last tip, especially for the low B flat. I will occasionally find in my playing and for my students that if I'm struggling to get the lowest note to respond the way I want, it can simply be that the mouthpiece and reed are just pulling down on my lip too much. So we've got to make sure that our neck strap is high enough, and a way to test this, you've got to make sure you don't drop the horn, but take the neck strap off, finger low B flat, and this is probably easier on an alto saxophone than a tenor or a bari, but try to play the low B flat without the help of your neck strap. And you might find that the note responds more easily, simply because you are forced to really hold that instrument up to your mouth enough, instead of letting it sag. I hope that these tips will help as you prepare your music this year. For lots more information, check out my video about saxophone voicing. Thanks for watching.